So I spent the rest of the night catching up on another theme that was on um, Filmstruck. Is actually one of the last themes we've added, and it is emerging filmmakers Celia Rowlson-Hall. It is 5 films, one feature, 4 shorts. You can get it all in under 2 hours. That's why I managed to watch them all after having watched all those other films today. She wrote and directed all of these films and starred in most of them. The first one is 2012's The Audition. It's about 4 minutes long, and it's sort of not quite a parody, but a satire. That's probably a better word. Satire of the grueling, or satire is not even the right word either. It's just a metaphor for the grueling. Metaphor is not the right word either. Why am I even talking right now? I'm tired. Basically, it takes the grueling process of auditioning for ridiculous roles, and in this case, the role of clipboard woman, um, to the extreme, almost grotesque. Um, Grotesque is the word I was looking for. Yay! It's a grotesque vision of what it's like to put yourself out there artistically, when in some cases the rewards are barely worth it. In this case, for the part of uh, clipboard woman. It's a great tour de force piece of acting and has a really interesting use of sound, in particular sound coming off screen, so you don't see the other people supposedly in the room, you just see her. Um, and her use of sound design to tell the story expands in all of her other films that are in this collection. So the next one is 2012's Nos Dejan, which means If They'll Let Us. And I'm not sure what this film was trying to say 100%. Um, but basically, it's again, so the previous one was more like a horror grotesque, and this was a comedy grotesque, if you will, of I guess it's trying to say something about coupledom. I've never been in a couple really, so I don't know. When people take the internal angst of being part of a couple and put it on screen, I don't always get it because I've never experienced that. Yay! But it always seems awful, so I'm kind of glad that I've spent most of my life with cats. Cats are great. But basically, it starts with a recently married couple, but they might both be dying in the ocean, and then there's a man with a metal detector, and then it cuts to the same couple in a very strange hotel room, and things get weird. And it's definitely facets of David Lynch type iconography throughout the film, with a little Sofia Coppola thrown in there. There's one moment in particular that's very Sofia Coppola. You'll see it if you're familiar with Coppola's work. Um, the the editing in this in particular is really interesting to create this sort of nightmare phantasmagoria of I guess maybe it's trying to um, talk about the anxieties of committing and or being married. I'm not sure. But the way that it utilizes editing to smash cut between moments with both of the people in the couple is very interesting. Uh, I don't know. I feel like I haven't had enough life experiences to understand this film properly. The next one was called Arrowed. There's no IMDb page for it, which I found that was weird. Had to Google around. It was made for the Nowness, so you can actually also watch it on their website, or I think you can watch all the shorts on Celia Rolson Hall's Vimeo page as well. And this one stars dancer Bobby Jean Smith, who is across from a man played by Shamal Pitts, who um, is sort of interrogating her in a very noir kind of way, but with increasingly nonsensical questions, and her answers continually change. And then it cuts to them being outdoors and an interior monologue of the woman. And it's actually written by Bobby Jean Smith, who I think was creating almost a autobiographical memoir esque um, interpretation of what it's like to feel ambitious. There is a documentary about her that's also about Ambition that came out a couple years ago. I have not had a chance to see it yet. Um, so I think it's an examination of um, artistic ambition and growing up in a small town, which I can understand that. I have artistic ambition and I grew up in a small town, but I have not reached for the stars the way Bobby Jean has. So this one is called Arrowed. The next one was called, it's very strangely um, stylized, so you need to like look up how it's written because there's a strange use of like parentheses and brackets. But it's called The End of History Illusion, and it's one of Miu Miu's women's tales. It's their 14th women's tale. I've seen, I think, maybe half of the Miu Miu women's tales. I'm missing them, but basically, Miu Miu for the last 5-6 years has been commissioning really interesting short films from women directors, some of whom have made features, some of whom haven't, that are sort of surreal portraits of the interiority of women. They're also dressed fabulously in Miu Miu clothing. In this one, it starts out as an advertisement for a high-end luxe underground bomb shelter that comes with with a full staff and food and fashion. And then after that ends, it's a breakdown of what would happen if the bomb actually did drop and everything went crazy and these um, the staff are left alone in this um, paradise that's actually a bit of a hellscape. It's beautifully art directed, as you would expect from Miu Miu. All of these Miu Miu women's tales are just eye candy for days. But this one, in particular, has several different kinds of artists mixed in, including a ballet dancer, and has a commentary on the comfort of home and how no matter what where you're at in life, comfort is an illusion and is precarious. And I think that's what this film is talking about in a really surreal, gorgeous way. And then the last one I watched is her feature debut. It's 80 minutes long. It's called Ma. It is they call it a silent film, but it's got sound. It has no dialogue. It's a dialogue free film. It's not quite the same thing as a silent film. But her use of sound to create tension is really wonderful in this film. And she plays the lead performance. And according to the write ups of it, it's supposed to be a modern day version of Mary's pilgrimage through the desert to the birth of Jesus. But in this case, she's going through the American Southwest to have a baby in Las Vegas. I don't know if it's supposed to be a commentary on like the sort of looking for the nihilistic tendencies of artistic hipsters, or or if she is a nihilistic and pretentious hipster. I'm not sure, but I had a hard time really getting into this one. It is beautifully stylized, and I liked what she did with sound design, but it really felt like she was acting with a capital A, and it just felt like you were following awful pretentious hipster people going through awful pretentious hipster. It could have been honestly her like on a journey to freaking Coachella is what it felt like. Um, so I didn't you would not know what this was really trying to be so much without that descriptor, except that there are a couple of moments where you can tell that she's sort of stylized to look like Mary, but it just didn't work for me. An interesting experiment, but the content did not work for me, and I liked her shorts a lot better than this feature. But regardless, I'm very much looking forward to what she does next. I think she has a very unique aesthetic eye, and as a dancer, much like the one I watched last weekend by the dancer director whose name is escaping me, Lily Baldwin, I think her incorporation of body movement to tell stories is very fascinating. And I think part of the reason some of the films are hard to latch onto is that her artistic core comes from that of a dancer and the way that dancers express themselves. And that's not necessarily the same way or using the same language as film. And not all dancers who then put themselves on film can quite capture the emotions they're trying to that probably come across in dance, especially live dance. So that's I think where some of the disconnect comes from. But regardless, I'm glad I saw her films. I think they're very interesting, and then, again, I look forward to more from her. So this again was the audition. Nos Dejan, Dejan maybe, Arrowed, The End of History Illusion, and Ma, all directed by Celia Rowlson-Hall. You can watch them on Filmstruck right now. And the shorts, I think, are all available on her Vimeo.